Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. You got to be able to match up in the cold. So I just think it was an interesting trade in my opinion, but best of luck to both those teams, but it kind of solidified who they are. So I'm excited for college football season, and man, did we slam dunk on two really good interviews. So I'm bringing up the first one because there's a lot to really think about what's happening up in Chapel Hill. So to talk a lot about that, about not only the new look of North Carolina football program, but even for their well-respected basketball program, Isaac Schade joining us here on the show. I do got to ask this, though, Isaac, is... Okay. I mean, I've loved watching Bill Belichek for a long time in the NFL. When you got the news, take me back to your reaction when it first happened, because I was like, Bill Belichek going to college? What is this, Rodney Dangerfield in that one movie? I was like, you got to be kidding me. But to me, I've always respected North Carolina from their basketball program, because I think Roy Williams, what he's done there before he retired, multiple national championships, winning in all cylinders, especially up and into the tournament. But then you come into a football program where even in the last, 5-7 seasons that I've watched them, they've been running the football very well. I think that, the quarterback situation has been kind of, here, there, because you're watching Sam Howell, you're watching Mitch Trubisky. So take me back to your first reaction up and on this and what that feeling was like to now have to hear Chapel Bill in North Carolina.
Jake, honestly, my first reaction was, I do not have time for this tonight, because literally the next morning we were surprising our kids with a trip to Disney World. And I was like, I'm trying to pack. I'm pre-recording a whole bunch of shows for while I'm gone. Like, why couldn't we have made, because we all knew about it for weeks, right? Ahead of when it was made official. So that was my reaction, was tonight? Really? No. Look, it's crazy, Jake. It's so like, I still literally, I laugh almost daily, because it's so weird to read. Like, for example, ESPN put out their ACC preview this week from Bill Connolly. Great stuff. And in his 2024 recap, talking about everything that happened in the 2024 season, and the last sentence of the whole recap is, "Oh, and Bill Belichick," right? And it's just like, that wasn't even part of this season, but it just comes up always. And so I think my response to it is, it really is wild what a big deal Bill Belichick, the entity, is, and how much people think of him and still revere him, and are like, I get stuff from people all over the spectrum. Like the Locked On NC State hosts are just like waiting for this team to be awful so that they can just dump on me, right? But then other people are like, I mean, it's Bill Belichick. We expect great things out of them. And he's got a whole bunch of his staff that's come with it. Like Lombardi is with him running the show. And that dude is phenomenal, man. I am so impressed by him. But, obviously bringing his son down from Washington and several of their players, thankfully, on defense. So, yeah, my reaction is, it's one of those things where you just keep saying, is this real? Is this happening? Man, it's going to be crazy. Who knows what to expect this year?
Feels like you're in like years of like in a dream, and you can't even wake up out of it. And then all of a sudden it's like, man. But I will say, though, I mean, listen, living in Denver, Colorado, I mean, I've had to deal with, Deion coming here, because the fact that, these former players, and even in these coaches, they come down here into the, the collegiate level, which, more than anything is like, college is so tribal, because there's just a different tradition to it, and people are invested and they love it. And so, I plan to go to a couple Colorado games myself to really see the atmosphere in Folsom Field. But the thing is like, you watch him, you watch Deion, you watch Bill Belichick. I'm watching, Ron Rivera be a GM at Cal Berkeley, where I was just like, oh, okay, I kind of see Cal Berkeley getting a little defensive. So, before we get into the really tasty stuff, my thing is like, and I don't usually go into, personal stuff like this, but obviously with Bill didn't really need like that advocate like next to him when it came to the NFL, because he was the most respected coach. Now, of course, everybody has their personal speculations. I'm not going to get deep into it, because everybody's lives, their choices, that's all on them.
Sure.
But when I look at his girlfriend being there as like that that extra helper right up from there. And listen, I give her props. She's very smart. I think she does know what she's kind of doing in some areas, but to kind of see this, and I think this is just the kind of thing that Bill needs, because in the NFL, you didn't need it, because you had the top tier defenses in 20 years. But when you come into the collegiate level, it's always good to have that resource that even when you go into the PRs and even when you go into these interviews, that's going to really kind of shed the light a little bit up and on his character a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny, Jake. My joke this whole time, tongue firmly implanted in my cheek, I might as well add, is that Jordan Hudson is really this big ruse where Bill Belichick went to her and said, "Listen, honey, I need you to just go be wackadoodle out there so that everyone is paying attention to you and that whole circus and not paying a lick of attention to what we're doing on the football field so we can catch everyone by surprise." And if that's not the most Bill Belichick MO, I don't know what is, right? Like, he's always doing everything he can to play everything as close to the vest as he can. In New England, it was always, you are going to get nothing more than what the NFL requires you to give out of him, because he will not give a modicum of information to an opponent to have an edge on him. And I don't blame him. Well, now he's required to give even less information by the NCAA and the ACC in Carolina. And so it's just this funny thing. And obviously I'm joking. I don't think Jordan Hudson is this intentionally misleading thing. But like, because what we said earlier about Bill Belichick, the entity, being this thing that everybody, this train that everyone wants to grab a hold of so they can get part of the news cycle, every time there's even remotely something interesting about what Jordan Hudson has done, everybody wants to write an article or talk about it or do something because it's a thing and it's related to Bill Belichick. And so it's just been such a weird offseason in that regard. He's come out and made statements of like, what the truth of it is, the non-sensationalized version, I guess I would say. And I'm really curious to see how much that dies off once the actual football starts happening, here in a matter of weeks with fall camp.
Right. And because the one thing I'm curious of, and, we've heard this saying all the time, is that, you teach an old dog new tricks, and my thing is like, I think about, because when coming in college, I'm sure, the both of us, we've had this experience in the past, but even when I came up into here, it was a start of a future. It was paving the way to where it was like, whatever your career goal, or even if you're up and on the football field anywhere as an athlete, you're starting your actual journey road after high school. So when you come up into recruitings, it's like, what's Bill going to honestly be with these new recruits? Yeah. What's he going to be like with the NIL and the transfer portal, and then all this other stuff? So there's a lot of things that I'm sure Bill's trying to take in piece by piece and really kind of be consistent with it. Yeah. But talking about, North Carolina football, and to kind of add this up. So Omarion Hampton goes up in the first round. And look, I watch film and everything. And to me, the kid has been a one of a kind. And I am watching North Carolina football. We've had some mixtures of a lot of North Carolina football running backs, especially when you got, Javonte Williams. You had several others that have come up into this program. But Omarion Hampton just looks like a completely different breed. Watching him and covering him, is there something that for all of us NFL fans that we really should expect, especially for a bright future? And man, wasn't it just a match made in heaven to go into Jim Harbaugh's backfield and like this is just going to work, right? Like, what was your thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought on it was I sat there on draft night shocked that you talked about the Broncos. I am still shocked that they didn't pull the trigger on him. I really thought they were going to, and now they might have to bear the brunt of it being in the AFC West. So we'll see what happens there. It's gonna be really interesting. But man, as you said, I think I tweeted almost exactly what you just said. Harbaugh and Omarion Hampton is a match made in heaven. The thing that NFL people need to know about Omarion Hampton is because of his skill set, like in everything that he can do, toting the ball. I have never seen, that's very big statement. I have not seen in a long time, at least I'll say that, because I don't want to over sensationalize something I've not processed through. someone that gets as many just broken tackles and yards after contact as he does, dude, it is absolutely insane, Jake. He's really made progress as a pass catcher. His pass pro is something that I think is underrated about him, and is something that I think can really help him get on the field early and often, be a true 3-down back if need be. Especially, have you seen this report about Najee Harris's eye that came out today?
Yeah. Like, what were the odds of that?
It's so crazy. So anyway, if there's anything lingering from that, no worries, because Hampton can handle all 3 downs of a series and keep trucking. But I think, Jake, the thing that most impresses me about him is when you have someone of his immense talent, you could see them being a diva or needy or any of that. Omarion Hampton is a just very quiet young man, just all about winning. That's literally all he cares about. Whatever Harbaugh and that staff asks him to do will happen, and in spades. And it's just like, he's one of those guys that you say, I'm starting a franchise, I need a running back, give me somebody with that mix of skill and temperament and personality, and let's go win a lot of football games.
100%. And like I said, I mean, watching the film and watching the tape, I was just like, oh, this screams Jim Harbaugh all the way. And the fact that he's trucking dudes. I mean, when I saw that picture of him when they first met face to face, I was like, this kid is yoked. This kid's like just really, really built like that. And, that's the classic running back you kind of have to have, right? So, and thinking about North Carolina, because the ACC, Isaac, I mean, everybody right now harps about, the Big 12 or the Big 10's been winning lately. I mean, obviously with Ohio State. And then, the SEC, I've always had respect for them because they brought in so much talent, even into the NFL. And then they've had their shots at titles. And so to me, do I feel that they've downgraded? Absolutely not. That's just ridiculous. But the thing is like the ACC going into this up and coming season, we know what Clemson is, even with, Kate Klubnik. And then we know, to me, my surprise would be Georgia Tech. That defense is just loaded.
So Haynes King, man, Haynes King is a dude.
He is. And so when I think about, the competition up and in this conference, North Carolina, I mean, they've been settling as being middle of the pack a couple seasons now. And then sometimes they've had some drop-offs. But, to me, I feel like with Bill being there, I feel like you're going to get a much better improved defense. Yeah. I mean, on top of this, where you can be built in the trenches like an Ohio State or like a Penn State or like some of these other Big Ten schools, and even for SEC, because you got to have a mixture of offense as well. So looking at it with this up and coming schedule, I mean, it's got some mixtures of some favorable matchups, but then those ones in the ACC conference, toe-to-toe matchups, that's going to be something that they know that Bill, he's got to get prepared for, right?
Yeah, absolutely right, Jake. What's so interesting about the schedule is it's one where all 4 non-conference games are up front. It's front loaded with non-con, and then you get all 8 ACC games after that. And interestingly, the only really game that you look at and it's like, oh boy, that's going to be a tough one, is Clemson. And they get Clemson at home in Keenan. It's their ACC opener after an off week that they get ahead of that game. And so that's interesting. Like, in fact, the whole schedule, I don't know that I've ever seen this. I need to go back and look. Literally every game is flip-flopped home and away. They never play home twice in a row, never play away twice in a row. But
yeah, back-to-backs every single time.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. And so they have that game against Clemson. I referenced, for example, that Bill Connolly ESPN ACC preview earlier. He tiered out the ACC into 3 tiers. That top tier of Clemson, Miami, SMU, and Louisville is what he has. Clemson is the only one of those 4 schools that Carolina plays. The middle tier, the only schools they play out of that are Duke, NC State, and Cal. And then the bottom tier, he's got BC, Syracuse, Virginia, Wake, and Stanford. Carolina has 4 of those 5 in that bottom third tier. And so you look at it and it's like, I mean, that's a super manageable schedule. The non-con is very workable as well. TCU in a standalone game at home on Labor Day. I mean, that thing, good grief, dude. I don't know how many media credentials there are going to be for Bill Belichick's first college game, but that's going to be nuts. Then they're at Charlotte, then they host Richmond, and then they go down to Orlando to play UCF. And so you look at that schedule and it's like, it's Bill Belichick. It's a what seems to be on paper, and right in the portal era, who knows what teams are going to end up actually being. But on paper, this feels like if you're anything shy of 8-4, probably something went wrong. And I know maybe that sounds lofty in the first year, but between Belichick, between everything they've been able to do in the portal, both the winter and spring portal, and the seeming easiness of the schedule, that they've got to make some noise here in year one, or Jake, everyone's going to be out chirping about it and like, oh, Bill couldn't do it in the college game. And so that's what's going to be really interesting to see. But the schedule, man, is really intriguing.
So, and it's funny because it leads up to my next question of it, because, last year we know that this was more of a run heavy type of offense, because the fact that, Amari and Hampton almost close to 2K, I mean, 1,600 rushing yards, but we know that you're going to need some explosiveness. And this is why I think that this kind of really aligned with Bill Belichick, because when I looked at it in the last few years up in New England, they were not superstar at wide receiver. Their quarterback situation, I mean, with Mac Jones and, what they were trying to do, it just didn't quite work. So you're going to need a bit of flashiness up from here. Now, the good thing is that he can start off to where they're a run heavy, run in the trenches. But then, of course, you're going to have that really good starting front where Belichick is going to have every single guy get physical and try to stop the run and even allow pressures. But then there's also, you got to think about your secondaries where they got to be man-to-man. They got to be able to have at least a spotter up out there. When the ball's in the air, he's got to be able to get it. So with Belichick's vision and his identity from here, is there going to be a little bit of something that from last year, what carried on? Are there going to be some similarities, or is there going to be a little bit of something that Bill knows he may need to end up pivoting, especially if you're trying to get points up and on the board, not just to win up in close games, but even in the games, you're going to want 10-plus point leads from there.
Yeah. The funny thing is, coming off of last year's offense, as you said, it was not as quick strike as the Sam Howell era. It was not as quick strike as the unreal Drake May era, which is funny that he and Bill Belichick were passing like ships in the night between Chapel Hill and New England. They just didn't have that last year, between Max Johnson breaking his leg in the first game, between Jacoby Criswell, who left Carolina, went to Arkansas, and eventually came back. Everything else, all of the non-Max Johnson guys basically transferred out to not FBS level schools. So that kind of tells you what you're dealing with under center last year. And now you've got this thing where Geo Baker transfers in. Max Johnson's out here putting up videos on social media like, hey, I'm ready for camp. I didn't think we'd see that. And then Bryce Baker comes in as a really elite, true freshman who came in January. And so there's this interesting mix there, Jake, that we'll see in that QB1 battle. Perhaps instructively, Carolina released the players that are going to ACC kickoff. They released that earlier today, and it's Geo Baker that's going to represent them. So I think that tells you at least something about where their head's at with that right now. Speaking of Omarion Hampton and Bill Belichick, following in Omarion Hampton's footsteps is a dude named Bullet Goss, which is the most rad name. It's actually Davion Goss, but everybody calls him Bullet. And this dude, when you go watch some of his film from last year, it was the second game of the season. The team is escaping me right now. Hampton got banged up in the first half. Here comes Goss, freshman, and he is built like Omarion Hampton. Is he going to be Omarion Hampton? That remains to be seen as we go through a full season, but they very much could carry on in that mold where Belichick is, as you said, it doesn't have to be flash, although they would love to have some. Right. But if they can rely on a Goss to be a bell cow in the model of Hampton, shorten a game in that way, and let a new defense under his son Steve that's trying to figure things out, that lost a couple guys late in the transfer portal that I honestly thought, like Bo Atkinson, who I thought they'd be relying on defense, might give that defense some time to figure out who they are to help stick around, because that's been the bugaboo for Carolina in the Sam Howell, Drake May era, is those dudes were trying to win games on their shoulders on offense and just hope they could outscore everybody. Can the defense catch up now that it's the Belichick era? Because we know that a Bill Belichick team is going to come in and they're going to ball on defense. Can they do it in year one in Chapel Hill? I think that might determine the success or lack thereof of this team.
So final 3 minutes up from here, we're shifting up and on to the men's basketball team. So, of course, I've always had such grand respects for Duke and North Carolina because they both have been, most prestigious programs that we've seen in the basketball realm. I mean, winning national titles and such. My thing was, I made this comment about a year ago when after Roy Williams retired, I felt like, okay, the next guy stepping up and in here, you're going to get some talented players. You're going to end up having, an identity to where, one, they're very good at aggressive scoring up and on the perimeter, but they're also very good at least shifting the ball around to get some open spots. But they're also not afraid to get physical when it comes to up and into the rim. Now, to me, everybody knows Duke really, killed this one out of the water. And right after, Coach K retired and the new one comes in, I actually had a really good friend, JJ Jackson, talk about this. But with North Carolina, obviously they are still a prestigious program. But to me, I know that the competition now is starting to get much bigger and a lot more difficult for some, and not even just these, one and done programs, which to me, they're like 90s hits, one hit wonders. But I look at the bigger programs and the bigger aspect because the NIL deals, players that are coming back for another year or two to really mature well and then be prepared for the NBA. So when you look at the future of, Tar Heels basketball, to me, I just think the team would be in good hands. But with this whole deal, could very much, at least use one, if not two, really impactful studs that can really help out with this team to get them back up into the Final Four.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And they have that this year in the form of a guy named Caleb Wilson, who comes in as a true freshman from Atlanta, from Holy Innocent Episcopal School, top 10 prospect in the nation. He's a power forward, but he's a guy that can play 3 to 5, can guard 2 to 5 switchably as needed. He comes in as far and away Carolina's best NBA prospect on this year's roster. What's interesting about it, and you so well said this, Jake, is Duke has done it through just bringing in like the singularly best talents they can find. This year, that's going to be Cameron Boozer, Carlos's son, who's an absolute dude. His twin brother, a little bit less heralded, but a phenomenal point guard. I think he will be Duke's starting point guard by February or so. I mean, they're going to continue to do it. North Carolina has tried to continue to do it through some of that development, but the problem is that's wildly more difficult to do in the transfer portal era because guys are not, I'm going to say not willing to stick around and do it, but that's not what the culture of college basketball is now, because let me go somewhere where I can play. And I cannot blame you. I would want to do the same thing. Let me get minutes. And so it's harder to program build, I guess I would call it, in this era. So you got to figure out, how can we blend some holdover guys? Like Carolina right now has a 4th year guy named Seth Trimble that's been there all 4 years of his Carolina career. He'll probably be starting at 2 at shooting guard this year. With bringing in a couple freshmen, you want to have that high-end elite like what you were talking about in Caleb Wilson, but they've also got a couple guys that were ranked in the 50s, Derek Dixon and Isaiah Dennis. You mix that with bringing in some portal guys. Carolina struck out majorly in the front court last year at the 5. They bring in this year Henry Vasar from Arizona, who should be that dude at the 5. They bring in hometown boy Jaren Stevenson back from Alabama. Jaren Stevenson's mom played at Carolina back in the Sylvia Hatchell era, way back when. And so you just start getting this mixture, and it's like, okay, what teams in the nation can figure this out and figure out who they are the most quickly and find that cohesion? And those are the teams that are going to win in this day and age. Who's willing to buy in, who's willing to play a role, and who's willing to sacrifice whatever for the good of the team. And Carolina has, outside of Caleb Wilson, a bunch of guys that maybe aren't wildly heralded. But what I've said consistently all offseason is just because somebody doesn't have the name doesn't mean they have the game. And these dudes got some game, and it just needs to come together.
Well said, man. I will tell you, though, funny story, a little blast from the past. So my birthday, of course, is in March. And so it's the exact day that the tournament itself starts up at. But I do remember little 8-year-old self that had spiky hair, all the rest of it. I just remember wearing the North Carolina hoodie. And I even wore the North Carolina jersey. I mean, that Tar Heel color, and just with
beautiful
the mixture of the black. Oh, man, you cannot go wrong with that. So to me, I will just tell you on record, I have a soft spot, especially for Tar Heel basketball. So to me, it's like I've always respected the program. I watched the time with Tyler Hansborough. I've watched the time with years ago, like really good players that have stepped up and into this program. But I really am shooting for. I think this is going to be the best of basketball with the fact that we got bigger programs getting bigger and better. And this is what we want. You want the bigger brand so I could develop and build the relationships with these kids. Even with what you said with Caleb Wilson is like, I want to know who this kid is. Oh, he goes to North Carolina. So when he comes in and he's ready for the NBA, I've already got a whole backstory up and on him. So that's why I'm hoping the NIL and the transfer portal, if they get this right, where it's more consistent, it's much more, built friendly for a lot of these programs, then maybe we might actually get a lot bigger and better action, and especially for viewership reasons for college basketball every single tournament. But Isaac, appreciate the time, man. Love the energy up out of you. Please tap in with all of our audiences, viewers and listeners, where people can find you to get hooked on what Chapel Bill's got cooking up here up with the Tar Heels this season.
For sure. You guys can find Locked On Tar Heels on YouTube and on all audio podcast platforms 5 days a week. I'm also the host of Locked On College Basketball. So if you're a college basketball junkie at the national level, man, that's coming at you 5 days a week as well. Same platform. Social media wise, I'm most active on Twitter, just at Isaac Schade. Schade has a C in it. It's dumb. It's German. It means what a pity. That's my lot in life. But come find me there. I'd love to chat with you.
Love it, man. I'm going to be locked on for the up-and-coming season, so I'm going to definitely check out on the content and just keep me up to date up on it, man. But appreciate you. Have a great rest of the week, man, and we will definitely see you the up-and-coming college football season, man. Take care of yourself.
You too, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, well, we got one college down, and we are now headed in.